All right, welcome back, everyone. Now, what awaits us next? We did start the day, if you recall, with a 5G demo case, and we have thus already seen the potential of wireless communication for the process industry. Now, what we would like to do right now is to dig just a bit deeper, stay on the topic, and look into the opportunities of 5G with experts from within the industry. And you might recall, one expert is sitting right next to me today, Bernd Muller. You've already joined us earlier for the said demo case. Thank you for rejoining us, Bernd. Now, in case you have missed out on Bernd, I would like to give him another short introduction. Bernd Muller is founder, CEO, and CTO of MyNXG, a company delivering turnkey industrial 5G connectivity to industrial sites. And the demo from this morning, by the way, is already available on demand. So any presentation, any panel you see here will be available on demand just a couple hours after you've seen it here live. So welcome back once more, Bernd.
Thank you.
Next up, I would like to welcome Dr. Josef Blantz, who has joined us virtually from Qualcomm. Thank you for joining us, Josef. Now, Josef,
thank you for having me.
It is our great pleasure. Josef is Senior Director of Technical Standards, overlooking Qualcomm's activity in IoT standards and IoT-related industry fora. And ever since, Josef, 2009, you have led Qualcomm's machine-to-machine and Internet of Things standards and industry fora work. And we are thrilled that you could join us for this panel discussion. Thank you once more for being here today.
Thanks, and welcome from my side, too.
Thank you, Josef. And last but not least, we have Sander Rotmanson. Hi there, Sander.
Hello, how are you?
Sander is also joining us virtually, as you can see, and he is Director of Industrial Wireless Communication at Siemens. His responsibility covers the product portfolio for industrial 5G, industrial wireless LAN, industrial routers, and the ACHEMA Remote Connect Management Platform for remote access. So once more, thanks for joining us, Sander.
Thank you.
All right, now moving along, let's get right to it. And I think the first question should probably go out to you, Josef. We have seen lots of proof of concepts. Where do you think the biggest opportunities for 5G lie, and when will the customers get the greatest value, or where can customers get the greatest value from?
Well, actually, 5G is already rolling out quite significantly in a number of industrial use cases. So naturally, everything where some equipment is either mobile, like AGVs or intralogistics, or where you need quick reconfiguration and changes of process plants or manufacturing units in a factory, everywhere where mobility is of concern, or where you can simply not afford to put cables, or where it's too difficult to access something with cables, that's sort of the lower hanging fruit where you can immediately start using 5G. And since it's a radio technology and a fairly robust radio technology, which I can explain maybe later on a little more about, you can actually cover a lot of scenarios already now with the so-called release 15 of the 3GPP standard. So these are the products that are on the market right now. And in the upcoming few months and weeks, and up into next year, we will see also some significant changes in terms of additional capabilities of the 5G technology, which will then allow to use it more, even in very, very demanding cases where you need an extremely high level of robustness or an extremely low level of latency. So all that is partially possible today and partially possible coming in the next very short-term future. So I'm quite optimistic. We see a lot of demand. There's a lot of industrial use cases picking up where around the globe. In particular, in Asia, we see maybe a little more appetite and willingness to try out such new technology in an industrial environment. So I think there's quite a few use cases. You cannot pick a single one that's very, very soon to be realized. But maybe if I had to pick one, I would say AGVs is probably the most immediate one where people would see immediately, because it's mobile, it's moving, that you can use easily a cellular technology.
Thank you, Josef. Bernd, same question goes out to you. Where do you see the greatest potential, or the greatest opportunities, the greatest value for customers, that is?
Okay. I would like to add to what Josef has said. And I think that he is fully right, that the latency aspect is one of the key aspects of 5G. That is very often everybody speaks about the speed and everybody speaks about the bandwidth. So what we are seeing is clearly we see the mass aggregation of sensor data, the wireless PLC, which we are very happy that we announced that in October timeframe last year, together with Phoenix Contact, where we were around half a year ahead of our strongest competitor, which I also welcome on this plenum. And we have a lot of 5G devices, and we see especially gateway aggregation, mass sensor aggregation, and PLC data aggregation as key use cases, which we are already deploying today. And I would like also to emphasize on what Joseph has said. The appetite is everywhere in the world except Germany. We have 95% of our business outside of Germany. We have a very strong appetite in the Asia, and we have also strong appetite in the US and Western Europe, especially also in Scandinavia.
How do you explain that?
I have been working my whole life for companies outside of Germany. I have been long time with Ericsson. I have been long time with Intel. And we had always at Intel and Ericsson the joke about the non-computerized Germans. And the issue is very simple. I think we are very conservative. We don't try things. We are too traditionalist. When something has a risk, we always see the risk. We never see the opportunity. And that is something which is completely different when we are talking to our customers in the Netherlands, in the Nordics, in the UK. They see the opportunities. They are going actively in, and they want to really see where is the business potential, where is the business, what you can grasp. They see, I always have a discussion with the risk and the security. And we had a quite good discussion with the HSE in Great Britain, where we found a very good, attractive network configuration, which we are deploying on all of our products, and they were very supportive. We had the same discussion with German authorities, where we always were asked, what is the risk, what is the risk, what is the risk? So we have a very risk-affine kind of culture in Germany, and a very opportunity-driven, open-minded driven discussion, especially in the Anglo-American and also in Asia.
All right, so maybe we need a bit more courage in that sense in Germany, that is.
There is a lot of opportunity around, and we should pick it.
Thank you very much for that. Now, Sander, perhaps next up you could dig a bit deeper, if you don't mind, into typical use cases in automation environments. What kind of use case would benefit from 5G mainly, or in the first place?
So I think Joseph already brought some up with the use case of mobile equipment, mobile devices. But I think one thing is for sure with 5G, it's about creating a joint ecosystem where we all work together, creating a system where we can leverage the benefits from different kind of products together in one kind of network. And I think that is one of the big opportunities for 5G in general. Hence, we're doing lots of proof of concepts. One of our more well-known ones is the upcoming one, the 5G Smart Venue at the Deutsche Messe Fairgrounds. And also there we invite lots of German customers to take that risk, where Bernd just spoke about, to see that there is none, because I think that is something we need to jointly show our customers and users that 5G has few risk and lots of opportunities, and this is something we need to do. So, but then talking about what kind of automation use cases we see, I think it's quite easy to say it's AGVs, AMRs, so mobile robots, but the key is in bringing everything together into one network. So if you look at, for example, wireless technologies today, you have a wireless technology for sensors, you have a wireless technology for AGVs, you have a wireless technology for connecting tablets on the shop floor. Why not thinking about creating one big network which does everything at the same time, while you at the same time have the possibility to transfer high bandwidths, as you have certain devices with low latencies and other sensors which have low power consumption. And I think that is one of the key things for 5G we need to look into. And then also the fact that with a private 5G network, where we maybe can talk about later in the session as well, where we see additional benefits coming into the factory, because then you created the data privacy, which is optimal because you really have that network under your own control.
Sander, speaking of perhaps too much traditionalism and having to bring more courage to the table, everyone still thinks wired. So how, in your point of view, will private 5G deployments in manufacturing perhaps be able to accelerate Industry 4.0?
So I think, do we all think wired? How many devices do you have wired at your home?
Near to none.
So near to none. So, and I think that is most of the people's answer. So actually, we do trust wireless solutions already for our home. The next step is bringing this into the factory. And if I look at just discussions like 10, 15 years ago, when we were brand new with industrial wireless LAN on the market, and we had discussions. Is it really reliable? Can I trust it? Is it good for safety applications and that kind of discussions? And now we're not discussing those topics anymore. Now we're discussing what can I do else with it? So where can I find future solutions to solve with a wireless network? But truth to be told, I will never replace a wire just because it's possible. I really need to see the added value. Because the more devices I've connected wirelessly, the more I'm congesting the air, the spectrum, and then they're in each other's way. And then when I can have one device cabled, that's better. But if we talk about private 5G deployments, for example, where you can really set up the network the way you need it, based on the industrial applications requirements you have. For example, when you have an AGV which runs in one hall, but also outdoor, you need to create one network which covers both areas. And then if you have a robot which might need to work on something which is already on the AGV, they need to sync up, they need to work together. So we talk about latencies. But then again, if you talk about a video system, you talk about high bandwidth, but there's also one thing all these things have in common. It's production data, and that is something you don't want to lose control over. So hence a private 5G deployment will definitely bring some of the benefits of the technology of 5G, but in a private surrounding, just like your Wi-Fi at home. You will see when you surf at home, for example, you will also use your Wi-Fi, your private network, not your cellular network.
Joseph?
Maybe if I can add a bit
to
what Sander. Okay, if I can add a little bit to that. So the convergence to really use one ecosystem, and a fairly strong ecosystem with many providers of components and modules and technology, that's very convenient argument, because you can now transport different types of data, as Sander was saying, maybe production data that's latency critical, as well as data that's more for, let's say, enterprise resource planning or not latency critical, or just IT data, tablets, user interfaces, HMIs. So 5G is really capable of differentiating all these types of traffic and treating it adequately, so that if you do really need low latency for specific connections, that you really get it in a reliable manner, and that you can still use the remaining bandwidth, which may be massive for other use cases, or that you can configure the system to also handle very low power, maybe even battery-driven devices for sensors that are hard to reach. So using such a technology now enables you to think about use cases that were maybe prohibitive before, where it was just too costly to get there with a cable or to get to that particular position. Well, we see a lot of demand picking up in the industrial sector also with things like drones for inspecting manufacturing equipment, or inspecting areas where it's really dangerous for a human being to go, or where it's just hard to get without a drone. Also, that can be handled very robustly and reliably with 5G. And then another aspect that comes into this game is this cellular radio technologies. They come from an ecosystem where we are all used to use smartphones. And these smartphones contain a lot of processing and I/O capabilities. So if you would be surprised if you really looked into your smartphone, how many sensors are connected to your electronics inside the smartphone. There's easily a dozen or more sensors already connected. So these processors and the silicon that you use in smartphone is already designed to deal with a lot of I/O It's designed to deal with a lot of local processing capability at a very power efficient working point. So you could take these advantages from the cellular sector, from the strong cellular ecosystem that we have today, and use them actually in the industrial production. So now a sensor doesn't necessarily only use a wireless chip purely for communications. It can do more, and that chip has already processing capabilities. It can help you, for instance, if you're using artificial intelligence algorithms to do a local processing, the so-called inference part. So if you do a pattern recognition, the sensor itself may be able already, the training could be done on a bigger server, but the sensor could be ready already to recognize there's a human being in the way of an AGV and the AGV stops, these kind of things. So that comes together with 5G. So it's not only the communication capabilities and the capabilities to mix certain different types of traffic in a reliable manner. It's also the processing and the ecosystem that goes around it that makes you think different, makes you think other than the way you used to think with wires.
Bernd, I saw you out of the corner of my eye nodding vigorously. Would you like to add something, please?
Yes, I would fully add to what has been said by Josef. We have today the smartphones fully integrated into our solutions. We name that SMART, and that stands for Secure Mobile Application in Real Time. And what we are doing there is quite simple. We empower the user. We give the user with his smartphone we are using in the moment Android, and we will later also go to iOS. We have systems where you are interacting directly with a PLC, where you are getting access to sites, where you are getting already today, we are guiding truck drivers, scheduling truck drivers with a smartphone, coming to an access site, going in, taking an access, going on the site, deloading that truck on an industrial tank. And we monitor all that about 4G, and that is not like impressed, something which is future. This is what we did already in the beginning of the year. We have digitalized for the biggest chemical distributor in the world, a complete site in the Netherlands, a pilot site, where we have all that what Josef has mentioned, real life, everything in the moment still on 4G, but we have it also in our campus in Nuremberg, completely alive in 5G, and can demonstrate the system. Here's the Swinetrecht system in 4G, there's the Nuremberg system in 5G, and we can demonstrate gateways and everything, and really interacting. And what the people love the most is they can use their smartphone as they are used to do it at home, now at work. And that brings also a little bit fun to work. So that means we have a high acceptance for getting paperless, and that is something which is maybe forgotten. Everybody speaks about the augmented driving and the virtual cases and so on. What people love the most about our technology, get rid of the Excel imports from SAP systems, get it as a tick on your tablet, get rid of filling out endless statistics, interact simply by scanning something, by doing something with our smart. And that is exactly what Josef has said. We are extending and using the capabilities that the mobile provides us to interact. And that is boosted by 5G. And if you go now in a private network or in a public network, with 5G doesn't matter. Security is not a topic of that. Security is a simple topic. If you encrypt the data at the source, and decrypt the data at the cloud. And if you have security inside your sensors and devices and make secure devices, and you have a secure cloud, as we have, everything is working. And we have opened our ecosystem for a lot of strong players in Germany. And I would like to mention a couple of our partners. It's Anderson Hauser, it's Phoenix Contact, it's Talk. So we have a really ecosystem behind it. And like Josef has said, this is the way that the mobile industry was ticking, and that is the way we are already working, and that's the way our customers enjoy it.
I think it would be great to have a look at different deployment options as well. I think that would be interesting to the viewers. But before we move along, I'm just very curious, can I ask you how many of your devices at home are wired? Any at all? If you think that long, then you probably have none wired, is my
I
understanding.
think the last thing that is really wired is I have an old amplifier at home, which I love because I have a couple of vinyls. And for that reason, that is the last thing wired, and I have a huge collection of old LPs which I use. But that is where my both girls are always saying that I'm hopelessly old-fashioned.
So you're a dinosaur to them,
That-
probably. But you know what?
that-
Vinyl is classic, and that's an exception.
Yes.
So, hang on to those wires right there. Now, as just mentioned, let's have a look at different deployment scenarios. Returning to you once more, Sander, public deployment versus semi-public deployment versus private deployment. Which one would you say brings the most benefit to the industry from your perspective?
So it depends a little bit about which use case. So if we talk, for example, about remote service maintenance applications where you want to sit at home like I do and want to maintain something in a factory a couple kilometers in another country, or a piece of machine equipment in another country, then for example, the public network is ideal. You just attach a 5G router to the device, to your machine, to your plant, or you have another remote entrance, and you can just use the network as you have at home, your Wi-Fi, your LAN cable, or maybe just also your 5G network when it's already rolled out in your region, and then you remotely connect with the network, combining that with, for example, an open VPN platform for additional security. I think this is something really worthwhile looking into it. Semi-public deployment is this using the same network, but you get the space of your own. I think there are some benefits for it, yes, but I think the most benefits for really using 5G in the shop floor you will get from private 5G deployments. So what you need there is spectrum. So you have your own spectrum, like we have available in Germany, in the US with CBRS, in the UK, in Finland we have some in Brazil. So more and more countries are joining that bunch to really give the spectrum for local private networks. And then you can really set up this network the way you need it. So if your robots want to have low latency communication because they're not so interested like we are in watching a Netflix movie, you can really make sure that network is optimized to really solve that use case. And then you have that massive wireless sensor network in your plant where you have many sensors connected. You can maybe focus the network a little bit more on that low power, this reduced power usage consumption with end devices connecting to that, where you ensure that you can connect up to 1 million devices per square kilometer, which is actually the same as 1 device per kilometer per meter. Sorry. So not that much, maybe if you look at it from that perspective. And I really think that scenario will be key of being successful in Industry 4.0 on the smart floor, or so to say, industrial IoT applications.
Thank you, Sander. Bernd, would you agree private deployment bringing the greatest advantages for the industry?
It is depending on which kind of company you are and which plant type you are. And we should not make an error by saying a private network is more secure than a public network or semi-public network or fully public network, because we should separate one thing in the discussion very clearly. Security starts with secure by design devices, with a TPM inside, with a strong security. And the second thing is data. At the end, you only can protect data when they are encrypted. So you need to have keep the data encrypted. And the last thing is you need strong clouds. You need to have on the OT side strong clouds. If you do that, then it is fully not a security question in which deployment you go. If you have that, so that you can do the security in all ways when you are doing and implementing the right security principles, as example as we do, which are all BSI certified, then it is simply you need to look into, do I be a plant of a critical size? Then I would always go with Sander and simply say, take your private network, do the investment. This is much cheaper than you think. We have a strong cooperation with Nokia, where we have the Nokia 5G solutions integrated into our complete solution. And we are using, by the way, also Qualcomm chipsets from Fibocom very strongly. So more or less all devices are on Qualcomm. And we are quite happy what Josef and colleagues are delivering. So it's really so that what we see is when you have a strong footprint, when you have a strong factory with a certain size, go for a private campus and don't be shy. We see also a discussion here in Germany when we are presenting to really huge producers, medium-sized companies which have 1,500 people or something. They are a little bit hesitating to invest 1-2 million euros into a 5G campus. It's the same guys, they are implementing 10 million, 20 million for a machinery park that doesn't bring them the same benefits in making it productive. So we think that the threshold to go for a 5G private campus is relatively low, and the benefits are relatively high. And it is starting somewhere, I would say, when you have a plant size of 300 to 400 people, enough connected users, then a couple of machine lines, then it is already a good break even to go for a private campus. If you only want to monitor some machine remotely on a site, you always go over the public.
Thank you.
That's very simple.
So it's okay. So it's a question of which point of view you're approaching it from, which perspective. Thank you, Bernd. Now, Joseph, if we actually take a step back and return to a fundamental question, or something that perhaps many are in doubt of, then what would you say to people who doubt that wireless can be robust enough in the first place for industrial manufacturing or a process plant?
Yeah, let me reach out a little bit into the past, because that's important to understand. So if you look at the multiple decades, let's say last 30 years of development and evolution of cellular systems, the number one target there was to optimize for capacity, which means given a certain size of spectrum, the number one goal was to get as many users served in that spectrum. Initially, of course, with voice calls, then later on more messaging, now today video and all sorts of so-called best efforts data. But even including 4G, the most focus was on optimizing for capacity. Now with 5G, that changed dramatically. For the first time in this long history of multiple decades, the technology was designed in a way that whoever deploys it can make a choice. So you can say, my prime target as a public operator, let's say with nationwide coverage in Germany, is I need to serve as many users as possible with my given infrastructure investment. So I want to put up a certain number of base stations and serve X million of users with a sufficient level of service, and then I'm happy because I can make revenue with that. This is not the situation we have in private networks for industrial deployments. In there, the reliability and robustness is much, much more important. So there were new concepts. Some of them were, to be honest, already developed in context of 4G, and now many more have been added to really increase on robustness. For instance, just to keep it not too technical, you can serve a single machine that is connected wirelessly with multiple so-called transmit-receive points in a shop floor, in a factory hall, so that simultaneously data is being transmitted to that machine or received from that machine from, let's say, 4, 5, 6 little base station points or antenna locations, so that just in case one of them fails or cannot get the data through because of some shadowing or difficult propagation conditions, that there's still plenty of other opportunities to get the data through. So that's one concept. So other concepts were certain duplication of data without sacrificing latency. So still being very, very quick, but having multiple duplicate paths where data can travel. And I don't want to go into much more detail, but 3GPP, the standardization organization for 5G, has put a great effort into increasing that robustness to a level so that we were able to demonstrate, for instance, in a factory hall where forklifts were driving around and where metal objects were moved around, we were able to reach a packet error drop rate that was so little that we had a reliability of so-called 6 nines. So 99.9999% of the packets were received at the very first attempt without any retransmission. And the maximum time that was allowed for getting such a packet through was 1 millisecond. So at the same time with extreme low latency. That is really now possible with 5G. And it was made possible by a conscious trade-off that you say, for instance, we are not aiming anymore only for optimizing the capacity. We want to give whoever runs that network the choice. Do you want to optimize for capacity, maybe sacrificing some of the robustness, or is robustness your prime target and you still have a fairly decent capacity? And that the latter one is probably the case in industrial use cases. So I can confirm with actual practical experiences where we measured over multiple days and even weeks to have enough statistics that you can reach these kind of levels of robustness with 5G technology. And it goes a little bit back to your deployment question. In a public network, you don't have the choice. The public network operator has already made the choice for you. And obviously, they need to make revenue with service agreements and typically have then as their target the capacity to be optimized. But if you want a private network, which can be deployed by maybe a public network operator in a certain piece of spectrum that you get exclusive usage for, then you have the freedom of adjusting your parameters in the system such that the robustness is extremely high, so that packets really get through at the very first attempt or at a very short time after that, so that the latency is still very low. And that is really a lesson learned from 5G and is now available as a technology in the market. So I think that has been a game changer now between the first 3 or 4 generations of cellular radio compared to 5G.
Thank you, Joseph. I'd like to circle back around to something you said, Bernd, or something you mentioned, you grazed as a topic, as a follow-up question. Are connected plants really secure is the overall question. And you spoke of security just very briefly earlier. In your point of view, are traditional cybersecurity methods why are they not sufficient, like firewalls, for example, to give you a blunt example? When transitioning from wired to 5G, I'd like a very brief answer from all of you, Bernd.
Okay, very straight. A firewall is always a filter function. So you filter certain messages out and you filter certain things in a very simplified way. The principle is quite straight. What we think is a secure way, and that has been always the case, is data must be encrypted. And to encrypt data in a securely way, you need a hardware-based security. That's also about what the BSI, for example, clearly states. So hardware-based security on the device side, secure by design devices, encryption of data, and decryption of data on demand in a cloud, which is also based on hardware-based security. We have that. We are having here strong partners on board. We are using TPMs from Infineon. We are using HSMs from Gemalto. The technology is available. We have open standards. Everything is possible. And we have deployed very high performance encryption and decryption technology with 65 people. So nobody can tell me that that is not feasible to be the standard for the industry. And we have everything specified in a way that we are fully compliant to Kerckhoffs's principle that only the keys shall be stored securely. And with that, we are making the things really secure. It is never working when somebody thinks, I have an unsecure device and I built some fences around. I'm coming from Nuremberg. In Nuremberg, we have this beautiful old city wall. I always tell my engineers, our principle is very simple. You can put the data open on the street. They are encrypted and they are protected. We are not relying on the Middle Age city walls or firewalls-like style of production. That is very simply what we think.
Thank you, Bernd, for that straightforward answer. Sandra, what do we need to pay a special attention to when it comes to cybersecurity when transitioning in plants from wired to 5G?
So I think making sure we still use it, and it's not just about getting the technology secure. You really need to talk about your overall process, and I don't really see a big difference into wired connections via versus Wi-Fi or 5G connections. It's really about getting the encryption in there, making sure you have multiple layers of security going on, from the technology to the actual devices, to the connections in between them, and and when you let networks work together with each other. So I really think it's an overall concept we need to think in, which goes beyond the solution itself, which goes beyond the devices, and also needs to include the users of the solution as well.
Joseph, would you agree on what you just heard?
Yeah, I agree to all what was said before. I think what 5G is contributing in terms of making industrial communication more secure in the future. First of all, what Sander just said is correct. It doesn't really depend on whether you transmit over cable or over 5G, but traditionally, there was this thinking of, oh, if I do have access to the cable, so I'm on site, I can actually connect to the cable, that's already providing some level of security. That may be true if you really trust everybody in an organization, in a company to do the right thing, but that's a false sense of security in my view. And what 5G brings is that these different pieces that Bernd already mentioned. So the first thing is you need to have proper authentication. Is the device or the end node, could be a machine, could be a server, is it really the one that you think you are talking to have proper and trustworthy authentication? After that, do I really admit that device? Now I know who it is. Do I allow it to get into my network? If it's in your network, so authentication, admission, and then access control, what is that device allowed to do? And last but not least, of course, encryption and integrity protection. All these 5 pieces that are now listed have always been there in cellular communication. So when you try to access a system, you have to have a proper way of authenticating yourself. You have to get admitted. You have to understand what is it that you are allowed to do, and then you can transmit your data in an encrypted and trustworthy manner, and it cannot be changed by somebody else. All that has been in cellular communication for a long time, and now it's automatically also carried forward into the industrial sector. Just in the industrial sector, the solution is not just to introduce 5G. You really have to make your processes secure. You have to think about who do I want to admit? What is then the root of trust? A secure processor like a TPM, or we call that differently in our products, but a secure root of trust so that you can actually allow a device to enter the network. And that chain that I just described, that is something 5G is bringing to this bigger menu, and it's business as usual for 5G. I think it's just necessary that the way industrial communication has been handled in the past needs to be made more secure, because sometimes that was not done the right way in the past.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Now, I would love to hear your visions for 2030, but I'm afraid that's all the time we have for now. If you can and if you want, just giving me maybe 1 or 2 buzzwords. Describe what's most important when it comes to your vision in 2030. We really only have 1.5 minutes left, so we're going to start right here with Bernd once more and then go around.
Very straight. Digital workflows in a fully digitalized wireless environment, where the cable is always maybe available for energy and for fallback scenarios. But I strongly believe that we will see a strong wireless future.
Thank you, Bernd. 1 sentence or just a few words, Sander, to give us your outview of 2030 or your vision.
Making sure that when we talk about the last 2 years and also in the future, we make reality, making sure that this next generation wireless technology such as Wi-Fi 6 and 5G really make these possibilities where we talk, these dreams where we talk about a reality.
Joseph, your vision for 2030?
My vision is very flexible production cells that can be reconfigured on the fly and make resource consumption overall much more efficient so that we all live on a better planet.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. That's all the time we have. Thank you for the very interesting conversation. Thank you for joining us a second time live here at the studio. And thank you to everyone who has joined us here at ACHEMA Pulse for this very interesting conversation. We will be right back. Next up, we have a live interview about chemical recycling. Don't miss out. And thank you once more to Joseph, Sander, and Bernd. Thank you for joining me, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.